Hi folks, it's Switchback. Given the state of the economy, I thought I would go over some of the best ways to save money backpacking and some other ideas for saving money on backpacking gear. Get ready to take lots of notes. I have so many tips for you. This is going to be a full-on fire hose kind of video. I'm coming from the perspective of a military veteran who has also worked at REI, so I'm familiar with the discounts that are related to those, and I'm going to cover some of the discounts that are related to other folks, but there may be more out there that I'm unaware of, so I hope that this sparks some ideas for doing some of your own research. Some of these tips came from a blog post on cleverhiker.com, and I'm going to link it below because it also has a list of lots of inexpensive brand new gear ideas. And so I don't want to go over a ton of specific items because I'm not personally experienced with them, and I really don't want to recommend something that I don't have personal experience with. But I will talk about a few items that I do have experience with. I am not sponsored by any of the websites or companies that I am mentioning today. I think it's important to not go and spend a ton of money on a sport that you don't even know if it's your jam yet. And even if it is and you're not made of money and you don't have a disposable income, it's nice to not spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to get started. When it comes to getting backpacking gear and clothing, first, look at what you already have. You might have clothes or shoes or even cookware that will work to get you out there. You might even have rain gear that's suitable for backpacking. Taking proper care of the gear that you already have will extend its life and make it easier for you to continue to get on the trail with it. For example, you can put a ground sheet under your tent. You can even use Tyvek or Polycro. Tyvek is that waterproof stuff that you put on the side of houses, and Polycro is like this really thin plastic stuff. It doesn't last as long as Tyvek does, but it's less bulky and lighter weight and cheap. But you can also order a specific ground sheet that fits your tent. Make sure that it doesn't come out the outsides, otherwise if it rains then the water goes pooling underneath your tent. Take good care of your water filter if it's one that needs to be flushed. For example, I have a Sawyer Squeeze. Be sure to back flush it before and after any trips that you take. Store it clean. Store your backpacking quilt or your sleeping bag loosely and wash it infrequently and properly. In fact, keep all of your gear clean. Your dishes, your sleeping pad, your tent, your clothing. Don't let anything sit dirty for too long. For example, with your dishes, the salt in your foods can corrode the dishes over time. Try to repair your existing gear rather than replacing it. And you can talk to the manufacturer, you can talk to a professional, like if you need a tailor. There are a variety of different repair shops locally. Sometimes the website for the manufacturer actually does have some guidance on this, and there's always tenacious tape for 90% of repairs. See what you can borrow from friends, especially if you're going on a trip together. Friends generally have all kinds of gear. I have more sleeping bags than I want to admit. When you've been doing this a while, you tend to acquire gear, and as you upgrade, sometimes you don't necessarily get rid of some of the older stuff, which is great for lending out. Look at used gear. I know this is not a new idea, but there are so many places that you can find used gear. I have an REI Half Dome tent that I bought in 2015 at a used gear sale. It's still going strong. I think they just decided that they wanted to use it for one trip and didn't like it. I don't know. In fact, when I was coming into the park to film this, the girl she was opening up the gate at the time, and she was saying that she works at Sports Basement, and they've just started doing a trade-in program and selling used gear as well. I have a ton of places where you can find used gear. I'm going to put links down in the description below. Facebook Marketplace and groups that are specific for backpacking gear and gear trade. There are Reddit forums for this, Craigslist, Nextdoor, Poshmark, eBay. Those are some of the obvious ones. Geartrade.com is another one. They do tend to take 13%, I think, from their sellers. So just that's something to keep in mind. Arc'teryx, Patagonia, and the North Face all have used gear on their websites. And so you'll have to link to specifically that used website, but they all have their own, and potentially other manufacturers do, of course, as well. For members of Backpacking Light, they have a whole forum just for selling gear. There's Amazon Warehouse. You can go to pawn shops and thrift stores and flea markets and yard sales. Here we have Play It Again Sports, and there are other consignment shops. Any local hiking groups might have a swap. Hammockforums.net, whiteblaze.net, lowergear.com, rerouted.co, outdoorsgeek.com, and mountainsidegearrentals.com are both companies that will rent gear, and then they also sell the gear that they used to rent out as they rotate through it. Sometimes these places will even guarantee it, so be sure to dig through the website, see what their guarantee is. Sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes you're on your own, all sales are final. I know I mentioned that backpacking clubs sometimes have gear swaps. You can even do something like this with your friends, and like I have a lot of backpacking friends. I'm sure you're super surprised. We don't all backpack together, but we all probably have a lot of gear that we could exchange if we really wanted to. Sometimes cottage vendors will sell their returns at a discount. And cottage vendors are those smaller companies like UGQ Quilts or On Cloud, or there are a lot of different, more cottage companies than I could possibly mention. But they're just, like I said, small companies that sell backpacking gear. And it's nice to support a small company. I mentioned renting before, and I'm going to mention it again because it is a fabulous way to go while you're building up your kit and you don't know yet what you want and you want to try new things, or you're trying this out to see if this is even something that you enjoy, or it's for conditions that you're not used to, or. So REI does gear rentals. Apparently Sports Basement does gear rentals. A lot of local shops will do it. EscapePod.com does gear rentals. There are a lot of places that will actually ship gear rentals to you, which is a really cool thing. So then you're able to kind of look around and see what different gear is out there. Because I know, for example, during the pandemic, REI was not renting a lot of things, and probably other companies too. But, you could piece together what you needed to get out on the trail. Set aside some money each month and wait for things to be discounted. And so let's talk about some ways to get some good discounts. There's always the Amazon Prime days. There are holiday sales. There are Cyber Monday and Black Friday, all those good things. And when REI has sales, they have a 20% off coupon as well. Some camping gear companies will have a discount code for your first order. Some of your favorite YouTubers, not yet this one, but other people that you may follow as well might have discount codes for items or for your entire order. Again, I don't yet. If I do, I will put those down in the description below when I get there. For first responders, active duty military, and veterans, there are GovX, expertvoice.com, and there's always the Exchange, Guide Fitter. This leads me into pro deals. And if you qualify for pro deals, you may already be aware of this. But some people may not realize that they do qualify for pro deals. And you really need to be careful about sticking with the qualifications and that you are only ordering for yourself, because I know, having had access to pro deals, that is a major thing, and you cannot just be like, hey friends, like I get a pro deal, who wants a pro deal? It doesn't work that way. It's a really good way to lose that privilege. But you can get things for really steep discounts. Usually if it's an outdoors related job or certain other specific types of jobs, you'll be qualified for this. So if you have, like I said, an outdoors related job, if you work for the Forestry Service, if you do search and rescue, first responders, even fitness and yoga instructors, Department of the Interior, sports coaches, including like from high school and above. If you work in an outdoor store, which is how I've gotten pro deals, if you're a ski instructor or a ski patroller, or you just work at a ski resort, and even if you take a NOLS course, which is an amazing program. They have first responder courses, first aid courses, and it's not cheap, but it's 100% worth it. I have not done it myself, but I have a lot of respect for it, and I would love to take the time one day to do a wilderness first responder course through NOLS. It's a great idea to take a NOLS course, even if it doesn't get you pro deals. If you want to earn a little extra money, go look at a place where you can get discounts, and I can tell you that this is a very dangerous thing for your wallet. But if you go get a job at, REI, Sports Basement, one of those places where they do sell gear that you like, you can get a discount, you can get the pro deals, you get to talk to people about backpacking all day long. And one of my favorite things about it was you would get to see what people are returning that they might have bought online for super cheap, or that's been sitting around for 6 months and they're finally getting around to returning it and now it's steeply discounted. The cashiers generally will look out for things like that and let other staff know. So I've gotten some ridiculous deals doing that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some more specific gear here. You may have to sacrifice some ounces in the beginning in order to get some of that inexpensive gear, but it's all about getting out on the trail, and that is what matters. It's way more important than having the perfect gear set up, which, by the way, will never ever happen. When you're looking at sleeping bags and quilts, synthetic is usually less expensive than cheap. And if you're looking at jackets, a fleece is even less expensive than a puffy, but it will still keep you warm. It usually won't be windproof though, so keep that in mind. Try to avoid packing your fears, and that means like packing too much food, too much in your first aid kit, trying to cover all of the what ifs, the just in case situations. You'll end up with a lot of extra gear that you'll find that you don't need, which is a waste of money. It's a waste of weight on your back. Ultimately, aside from the 10 essentials of hiking, most things are luxuries or gimmicks, frankly. Just stick with the basics. Don't go for more than what you really need to get started. If you're okay sleeping on a firm surface, a foam pad can be a great budget way to go. And it's indestructible, which is really nice. It's really lightweight. It's very bulky, so keep that in mind. Usually people put them on the outside of their pack, or they wrap it around the inside and kind of use it almost like a liner. Check the R value of the pad and consider that for the conditions that you're going in. It's also a great place to sit and take a break when you're out on the trail. I like using mine to sit by the fire when I'm out backpacking. You can get an inflatable sleep pillow online for really cheap, and sleep quality is really important to me. But if you want to save yourself, $10, $8, whatever they're going to cost, you can just stuff your puffer jacket inside of a stuff sack. Don't use a compression sack because of the buckles on it. I would think that would be very uncomfortable. I suppose you could turn it inside out if you have no other option, but I would not do that if I could avoid it. This is how I grew up doing it, just piling clothes into a stuff sack and using that as a pillow. You can use an unscented trash compactor or contractor bag as a pack liner, especially if you're expecting it might rain, it's really humid, if there are water crossings. It's a good idea to have something inside of your pack to protect your gear. And these are super duper cheap and they'll last forever if you don't beat them up. You can even go in on a box of them with your friends and all of you divide them up. There will probably be more in that box than you will ever go through in your whole backpacking career. While there are slightly more expensive and more durable options, a dollar store poncho will get you through in a pinch if you're not sure it's going to rain and you just need something to get you through. Something like this can also make a good tent ground sheet. This is basically like polycro here. You can see how small it packs up. Learning how to use a map and compass instead of a GPS is another budget way to go. And there are free apps sometimes for downloading maps, and I will list some down in the description because none of them come to mind offhand right now. Sometimes you can print out maps for free, but using your phone for GPS will use the battery faster even if it's in airplane mode. And so then you'll end up having to carry a power bank, and a power bank is just one more expense. But if you're going to be out for a few days, it's definitely worth having. Trail runners will be less expensive than boots. They also won't last as long. And so it's kind of a matter of kind of decide what's the best way to go for you. But you can always look for last year's models, look for something that's marked down. Clothing that protects you from the sun will save you on sunscreen, so save you some money there in the long run and some skin cancer in the long run. So we like that. For shelter options, you can consider cowboy camping or tarp camping. And even an old school blue tarp with some cordage can get you through. But there are also some tarps out there that are specifically for this that are about as much as a very cheap tent. And they're super versatile. They're lightweight. They're less bulky than a tent. But I've been using a like $60 tent I used it all last year. It's awesome. I have a whole video about it. I'll put it up here. But that's a great way to go. So here are some strategies for your food and for your cooking while out on the trail. If you're out with friends, you can plan to pool together or you can plan to individually do things. Either way, you can figure out ways to make this cost effective. Plan out your meals in any case, and you can often find ingredients or entire sides or what have you at the grocery store. Some of them are freeze-dried, some of them dehydrated. You can dehydrate a lot of your own ingredients and meals as well. So if you have a dehydrator, an air fryer, or an oven that will go low enough, you can dehydrate a lot of different things. You can also purchase a lot of freeze-dried ingredients online, and I have tons that I've purchased this way. You can wash and reuse your Ziploc bags. This is something that I do religiously, and they're great for your individual meals. They make great ditty bags, which gets me on the tangent of ditty bags, which I don't use because it's just one more thing and they're harder to pack when you have a bunch of little baseballs you're trying to fit into your pack. One day I'll do a video about how I pack so that things aren't chaotic. Another thing I do is I refill my smaller canisters of fuel with my larger canisters of fuel, and I have another video with how I do that up here. You can use less fuel by using foil as a windscreen, or I've even used an Amazon pouch or my foam pad for that. Make sure that you leave one side open and don't rest the foil right on the canister, because if the canister gets hot, it can explode. This is a rare occurrence. Don't be one of those. You can even go without the stove and go with cold soaking or ready to eat foods. Ultimately, you really don't need a lot of cookware. So if you're just boiling water or even cooking over your stove, you just need like a small pot and a spoon. And you can even steal a spoon out of your own kitchen, or you can get a cheap one at a thrift store. I would not suggest wasting a bunch of money on a whole mess kit. I've done this myself. It was 100% a waste of money in my experience. For your water, you can use a bandana to strain out the big stuff and then use bleach to purify that water. You can also use smart water bottles instead of a Nalgene or a bladder, which will save you $40, $20. And these can be reused for several trips. I try not to do this just because I try not to use a lot of single-use plastics, but I do hear from people that they'll use these for several trips or even an entire through hike. But most of my Nalgenes have lasted me a good 10 years. I haven't broken one yet. Let's talk about some general strategies. Going with friends can save you some money. You'll carpool to the trailhead. You'll pool in for the permits. It may cost you a little bit more per person, but ultimately it'll break down to be less individually. And you can even share some of your gear. Some people may have a tent that's large enough for a second person, your stove, your water filter, but be sure to discuss any of this ahead of time so that everybody is on the same page and has clear expectations. Never assume that you can just use someone else's whatever. Look for places that are close to home so that you're not spending a bunch of money on gas, on travel expenses. And you can look for places that either don't require permits or that don't charge for permits or don't charge much for permits. And if you're a veteran, you can even get a discount on some permits. There may be other statuses that can earn you a discount, and if there are, I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. Look for gear year-round and well in advance of your trip so that you're not scrounging at the last minute and then you end up blowing your budget. Sometimes cottage companies can be less expensive than the name brands, and sometimes not. So look around and see what you can find. You can look at some of the cheaper retailers such as Big Five, Target, Walmart, Amazon, Costco, Sam's Club, dollar stores, grocery outlet, and Big Lots. Sometimes you'll find stuff here. It's of course not going to be the best quality, the most durable, the lightest weight, but it'll get you through. Some companies like Columbia and Patagonia also have outlet stores. Not everywhere, but they are out there. There's also REI Outlet, Steep and Cheap, AliExpress, Sierra Trading Post, Woot, thelasthunt.com. Your experience may vary on some of these. For example, I've never used AliExpress. I've heard wonderful things and I've heard horrible things. So proceed at your own risk. If you're good with a credit card, Amazon and REI both do 5% back when you shop with them. And make sure that you're paying off your credit card every month if you're doing this, because otherwise that interest wipes out any benefits. So keep that in mind. Target Red Card, there is a debit card and a credit card, and it's 5% off. Take a canceled check with you because nobody ever does that. And then you can just do the debit card and you don't have to worry about having another credit card. But that gets you 5% off right there on the spot on any purchase that you make there. With experience, you'll learn what you like, what you don't, what's most comfortable for you. So don't try to perfect your kit before you get out there. And what I mean by kit is your backpacking gear setup. You're not going to perfect it. And again, as you learn what you like, you're going to upgrade stuff. And as technology changes, you're going to upgrade stuff. So don't wait for it to be perfect. There's nothing that's ever going to be perfect. Just get out there and do it. And this is another argument for going used. And even better, half the time you can sell it for the same price that you bought it. So if you can afford to float that money for a while, and especially with stuff that you just need for one trip or a couple of trips, if you need, a Sub-Zero sleeping bag for this one trip that you're never going to Alaska again or what have you, or you're never going into bear country again and you just need a bear canister, get one used and then go and sell it for exactly what you paid for it. I've done this. I've actually made money on like kayaks and stuff like that I've bought, used for a couple of years, and then resold. Ultimately, gear is not what makes you a backpacker. Getting out and backpacking is what makes you a backpacker. I really hope that you found some helpful tips here, and I hope that you will like and subscribe if you haven't. Follow me on Instagram and on Facebook at Wandering Switchback, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. I hope that I see you on the trail because now you can afford to go. Thank you. Bye.